You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles, aka another edition of the Walkthrough, as today is game day in the stream yard. Today I have Mr. David Wise. Davey, what's going on, my guy?
Drake, game days are always a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day out here in Tallahassee, Florida, and I am ready.
I love how you moved to New York. You live not too far from Syracuse, and the game that basically you asked most of us to come up to see you, that you were down in Tallahassee.
And not one of you said yes.
That is a very fair point. And folks, as always, with the walkthrough, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is where the game starts. And Dave, let's just go right into it. FSU right now is currently 7.5-point road favorites at the Carrier Dome. I know it's JMA Wireless Dome, but until I'm old and gray, it'll be known as the Carrier Dome to me because they have no AC. It's hilarious. And also the over-under right now is over at 51. But David, since this is your brainchild, where do you want to go to first with the preview? With the walkthrough.
Yeah, it's looking. All indications point to Garrett Shrader not playing in this game for Syracuse at quarterback, which would mean Carlos Del Rio stepping in. We talked about it earlier in the week when we did our mini preview. That's not good for Syracuse. He's been impossibly bad in limited snaps this year. Obviously, he played the whole game against Pitt. He played part of the game against Notre Dame after Shrader got injured. But you're talking about a dude who's completing under 50% of his passes and has a PFF grade of like 50. And he's not mobile, which is exactly what we were worried about with Garrett Shrader. Mobile quarterbacks we've had a hard time with, though I do wonder if
he can move. He can move, but he's not like a dual threat that Garrett Shrader is.
He's not Garrett Shrader. Very few quarterbacks on our schedule are Garrett Shrader. Like, please don't take this comparison the wrong way. He moves a little like Josh Allen, like that deceptively fast. We said last year, he's either the fastest slow guy or the slowest fast guy there's ever been. But Carlos Del Rio is not. He's not going to beat you on the ground, which really lets you focus in. He's not going to beat you through the air based on what you've seen out of him this year. So all you got to do is stop Sean Tucker in this game. Sean Tucker ain't all that healthy, it seems, from the last few games. And if you can stack the box, force Carlos Del Rio to beat you and get behind your DBs that have played better and better and have gained a little more confidence over, I think, this last couple games against Georgia Tech and last week, I really expect them to make Carlos Del Rio uncomfortable. I expect this defensive line to have a great day and potentially some guys to make themselves some money for Florida State.
So one of the things on Locked On AC I kept saying last year when Sean Tucker was kind of emerging, the only way we saw Syracuse win games was basically on the back of Sean Tucker. One of the quotes I actually had all season was "Sean Tucker must ride." Was one of the things that you usually ride him down into the ground, ride him down like that. But right now it's a little bit different because, like you're saying, Dave, he does appear to be a little bit banged up. I think he's had, I think last game he had 10 carries for 19 yards. That's not the Sean Tucker that
uncharacteristic.
Like this kid came into the year as probably the number one ACC running back and probably a top 5 running back in the country. And now you have a Rondé Gadsden, very good tight end, very good option out there. He's also not 100%. This is a very, very depleted offense for Syracuse. So to me, for this, I want to see the aggressive, fun defense that we saw from Adam Fuller the past 2 weeks actually implemented here also on the road too as well.
Yeah, there's just not a ton that you're worried about this Syracuse offense, specifically with the state of it right now with Carlos Del Rio likely at quarterback, Sean Tucker banged up. Like you just said, their excellent tight end kind of dinged up. There's just not a lot that worries you. Like if Carlos Del Rio goes out there, you challenge him to beat you deep, and he's just taking the top off to a bunch of receivers, by the way, that really aren't very good. Tip your hat to them because they just had a magical day putting Madden on rookie mode and got lucky, I guess. But this is a Florida State defense that I think its strengths and the areas it's improved on, especially its DB play, are pretty well suited to a game like this because the only way Syracuse is going to beat you if Sean Tucker is banged up is to just throw the ball all over the place. Carlos Del Rio, again, I just don't think he's capable of doing that. So you shut the receivers down. you load the box, and you force Carlos Del Rio to just play a perfect game. I just don't see it happening, and I expect this to be a really, really fun game, like you just said, for Florida State's defense, where they can kind of get, I'm not going to say get creative, but where some of those kids can kind of pin their ears back, especially along the defensive line. That's going to be a fun dynamic to watch.
So now let's shift over to our defense, to their defensive line. Their defensive line actually in the past few weeks has been extremely hurt, extremely banged up. I want to say their nose tackle is also one of the smaller defense tackles in the country. I think he's like listed at 5'10.5". And spoiler alert for you folks out there, a lot of these athletes are lying about their height. They always add an inch. Trust me, I know. I worked in compliance at lacrosse. That's one of the big favorite things to do over there. But overall, to me, Dave, this defense for Syracuse is pretty banged up. They did lose Garrett Williams. Now, it's still a very solid defense, especially in the secondary with Deuce Chestnut. I think is the one over there. Also, that's a great name for a football player, Deuce Chestnut. But overall, to me, this is a team that, while they don't give explosives of that much, they're actually extremely poor in the run defense side of the game. And that's where I think we see Trey, Benson, Lawrance, Toafili, and if he's available, Mr. Trayshawn Ward actually probably make their marks today.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to need Trayshawn Ward in this one. Even if he's 90% and could go in this game, I don't. Depending on how the game flow goes, I think you just run Benson and Toafili out there. And if it turns out you need him, like if one of those guys gets injured, or if this ends up being a tighter game than you would think, I don't know, maybe you give Ward some carries and see how he responds. But yeah, this Syracuse defense to me is the only possible way that they keep this game remotely close. This defense has played well enough at times throughout the year that, especially earlier on in the year, we thought this was going to be a tough matchup to win, or if not, at least a close matchup. But right now, the way that defense has played the last few games, the injuries they've sustained, it's and the biggest weak point of that defense, like you pointed out, being their run defense. Man, it feels like it's gonna be kind of a pick your poison day for Florida State, like I said earlier in the week, because you're one of the best running teams in the country. You have one of the best running backs in the country, and oh, by the way, he was your backup most of the year. Jordan Travis obviously could use his legs. He wasn't called on to do it against Miami.
He hasn't been called on to do it all year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and he did against Georgia Tech a bit.
No,
but
he didn't. He didn't rush once.
Oh, sorry, not Georgia Tech. What was the game before Georgia Tech? Clemson, right? Didn't he run on Clemson? Yeah, he ran on Clemson. But no, I don't think you're going to need to put Jordan Travis at any risk of injury in this game. So I don't know that you're going to need to run him. You might see it just a couple times, but you're going to be able to throw the ball on a defense that, like you said, is going to be missing one of its best players overall in Garrett Williams. You're going to be able to run the ball on a team that hasn't stopped the run all year, even when healthy, by the way. Here's the thing, Trey. This game, it's possible. It is possible that this is a closer game than I think and that Vegas thinks. I don't think realistically you play this game 10 times, you lose one of them. I really don't. But I think it's really possible for the Syracuse to keep this game close by playing aggressive defense and by getting Jordan Travis off balance and, by committing to the run early and hoping your DBs can just provide one-on-one coverage on the outside. It's possible that could happen. That's their really only chance in this game. The problem for Syracuse is Florida State has not been good on a down-to-down basis most of the year, and we've been good at third downs because we've been so good at explosive plays. We've been in a lot of third and long. Syracuse is bottom 30 in the country in opposing third down conversion percentage, and they're bottom half in the country in third down conversion percentage themselves. So if they're going to be not succeeding on first and second down on offense, Syracuse, and I don't really expect them to if Sean Tucker's not fully healthy, and if they're not going to be able to stop third downs on defense, you're just going to be able to march the ball right up and down the field, either efficiently or explosively. That's what I meant by pick your poison. So I think you're going to see probably a more conservative game called by Norvell than a lot of people want, because I don't think you have to get super creative and fancy and risky in this game.
I kind of agree with that too, because if you watch the Notre Dame game too as well, they didn't have actually a lot of explosive plays. I don't think they had any rushing attempts. Actually, rushes over 20+ yards, but a lot of them were for like 6 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards, 6 yards. So that's something that I think that this team has shown effectively, especially with Trey Benson, that they're fully capable of marching down the field. And you're right, this Syracuse defense is extremely talented. It's a very talented, very well-coached unit. It's very fundamentally sound and very disciplined. Shout out to Tony White, the defensive coordinator there as well. But if we're able to keep them on the field for a majority of the game and probably beat them down, gas them out, they don't have the depth to basically be playing all 4 quarters. And also, conversely, if we keep the offense side of the ball, offensively, their new offensive coordinator is the defensive coordinator from Virginia. He was the Brian Armstrong kind of QB whisperer last season. This year with Garrett Shrader, he was amazing. But now Garrett Shrader being hurt, it limits the offense. So if we're able to do 3 and outs and basically prevent Syracuse from having long drives, keep the defense side of the ball on the field for Syracuse's side, that to me there is where this game is actually going to be won. So now, Dave, we're towards the end of the walkthrough. Give me an X factor, someone that we need to watch out for FSU on the offensive side of the ball and the defense side of the ball.
X factor on the offensive side of the ball. I'm just not expecting you to throw the ball all over the place. I just don't think you'll need to. Although I'd love to see it. I think Lawrance Toafili is going to be the X factor. Trey Benson's a really easy pick, but Toafili seems like he's not only gaining more confidence as the season goes on, but it seems like he's becoming harder to take down. It seems like he's seeing the field better, and I'm just really excited by his development because we were knocking him for not being able to gain weight. And that kid's running really, really hard right now. So especially if Trayshawn Ward doesn't go in this one, I'm really excited to see what Toafili does because I think he's going to get a lot of snaps, and I think he's going to get a lot of targets both out of the backfield and in the passing game. And on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to give it to Fabian Lovett in this one. I think that dude is playing for an NFL paycheck right now. And depending on how this season depending on how the end of this season goes, that dude can make himself some real money and shoot up some draft boards, I think. So I expect him to create some havoc on the inside, which not every interior defensive lineman does. But that guy makes the whole defense better. He makes the defensive line better. And I expect him to have a nice individual performance in this game.
No, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think offensively, Lawrance Toafili is my pick as well. I think he's someone that we've seen Trey Benson have the breakout game. We've seen Trayshawn Ward have the breakout game. And I fully agree with you here that I think wide receivers will have some shots. I think you'll see Mike Pittman have a decent game. Johnny Wilson, I love the kid. I think he'll do the same thing. But to me, Lawrance Toafili brings that sort of basically that pass catching ability also out of the backfield that with Trayshawn Ward, if he's not fully available, that's actually Trey Benson isn't as great at. So like Lawrance Toafili is a great supplement for that portion of the offense. But to me, defensively, I'm going to go with a name that we basically did not want to hear much being started, but he's been playing very well the past few weeks. I think Jarrian Jones actually is going to have a decent game today. And that's someone that basically he's been asked to start a little bit more with Amari Cooper being banged up, not being 100%. Same thing with Kevin Knowles as well, kind of struggling, but he's starting to find his form a little bit more. But Jarrian Jones, I think, might have the difficult task of helping out whoever is guarding Oronde Gadsden in the second. Oronde Gadsden, for Miami Dolphins fans out there, is the son of wide receiver for the Dolphins back in the 90s. This is someone that is going to be their number one threat offensively. He's a 6'5", 216 wide receiver, great hands, large target. Originally was a tight end. So to me, Jarrian Jones will be the one helping out or facilitating, double covering him. So to me, Jarrian Jones will be the X factor for the defense in this game.
Yeah, I'd love to see a pick six out of Jarrian Jones. Wouldn't that be nice to shut some people up, including me?
And including myself too as well. But folks, that was the walkthrough, our 10 to 12 minute basically episode, even though now I think we're at 14 minutes overall. So Dave, quickly, or however you want to take, please let the folks know how much you love them and also where to find us on YouTube and also the podcast level.
Before I do that, I'm going to tell you the final score of this game is going to be 42-13.
I forgot to do that.
You can take that to the bank, 42-13. Like I said, possible this game's a lot closer than both I and Vegas think. I just don't see it. So much would have to go wrong for us, and so much would have to go right for Syracuse. It would have to just be a perfect storm of events. I don't see it happening. That being said, I do love each and every one of you for listening to me talk here each and every day, and for listening to Drake talk here each and every day. On this, for the podcast, you can find us anywhere you can find your podcast: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, or wherever you're listening to it right now. If you are for the YouTube, please give this video a like if you did like it, which I think you should, because I predicted us to win 42-13, and that's always great. Subscribe to the channel and ding that little bell at the top. That'll turn on your notifications for when our videos drop. And please do comment below. Tell us what your final score prediction is. And if it's closer than 7, I'm going to be really disappointed because this should just be a fun game where you don't have to worry about the outcome.
Yeah, folks, give me Florida State 34. Give me Syracuse 17. I think that basically the total at the right spot, but I definitely think this is a Syracuse team that, if this was a healthier Syracuse team, I definitely think that they have a chance to keep it closer, but it's not a healthy team, and we've seen in the past 2 weeks basically going up against very solid defenses that they've struggled offensively, and the defense can only bail you out so much. So 34-17 is my pick. FSU will cover. The over-under, that's going to be a push, but you're not here for anything over that. So, Dave, thank you so much for joining me today on the walkthrough. Folks, thank you guys for joining us today. And please, if you can, don't forget 5-star reviews, either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you podcast from. For Dave, this was Drake, and we'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody, and RIP Batman.
PQs.
PQs.